sir.
I'm reminded that we
Red
are no
means
longer,
off, right?
we no longer can require the address, so just,
Julie Erlanger.
sorry, Julie.
It's really okay, not a problem. Okay. Good evening, administrators and board members. I've been proud to work in Urbana School District for 24 years. Aside from promoting the value of National Board and our certified teachers, I've never felt a need to speak at a school board meeting before. Nor have I wavered in my pride for this district. Until now. Yesterday we were informed at a faculty meeting that the deans at both UMS and UHS were being eliminated. And before I go into my concerns, please let me say this. Our deans work tirelessly for our students and our staff every day. They network with kids before school, during lunch, and after school. They make sure they get on buses safely, and they make sure they are safe at athletic events. They are excited for their successes, and they help them through their struggles. They routinely facilitate restorative practices with them when they make mistakes or wrong decisions. Bottom line, they care for our students, and they keep our buildings safe. And I appreciate all that they do. Many of you, maybe all of you, have no idea what the life of a dean is. Have any of you ever spent a day shadowing them? Or their students? How many assumptions are being made about how punitive they are without ever witnessing the work that they do? I would hope that none of us are making assumptions about individuals of any kind. That's what our district equity professional development asks us not to do. I want to speak to 2 points here tonight. Excuse me. Communication and safety. I think we all know that we work best when we work together, not around each other. And we have a long history in Urbana of doing just that. This is not the first time we've tackled difficult issues. In fact, I'm proud to say that in most cases in my career, in 24 years here, when we've had to do something like that, we've worked together. I can't remember a time ever when a major change to our structure, our curriculum, or our discipline came without conversations among the parties. I've seen so many PowerPoints in my career, I can barely count them. But I've appreciated that because in all my years here, I at least feel like I've had a seat at the table, even if it didn't include my vote in the decision making. I've always been informed of the plans to major changes, but in this case, I felt completely blindsided. A major restructuring to our buildings by eliminating deans and adding new positions. And when we asked questions, there were no real answers. Do you have a plan as to how to do this? Have you done research and have seen research models to support this idea? At the very least, you have the courtesy to come and speak to us, please, instead of sending a messenger. But without a seeming willingness to speak with us, we start to lose trust, and that's not a good place to be. We've heard that time and time again from other districts, but I've always been able to say, not Urbana, not us, that's not how we operate. I really want to get back to that point, but it will take time and action, and the first step of action is an answer to this plea. Don, Samuel, Kathy, will you please come to our buildings and have conversations with us, not without us? Will you be willing to answer hard questions? Will you bring us a research-backed plan? And finally, safety. Let us please not lose sight of that, especially in the climate in our country right now. Our deans and admin team work together with staff and students to make our buildings feel safe to work in, and we know they're safe. Our kids know that they can come to the deans when they hear of something coming. And our deans work quietly with our admin team to make sure we catch things before they ever happen. It takes a number of people with relationships with our students to make that happen. Please don't pull that away from us. Putting a fresh set of individuals in who don't know our kids may eliminate the trust our students have. And will they be able to come to us? I don't know. And I don't want to get into the position where we have to find out. And I'm certain that none of you do either. In our district, we promote a number of hashtags. Most recently, it was hashtag Teach Urbana. I hope we find a way to continue to feel good about using that one. Right now, I'm not real sure. But what I want to end on is hashtag proud of you. Dr. Owen, Dr. Bindum, Ms. Barber, administrators and board members. Please help me get back to that one. Please see us and treat us as professionals. Please communicate with us. Please respect us. I want to get that pride back in Urbana again. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Brianna, before you get started, I was remiss in not reminding everyone that the rules are 5 minutes for each speaker. And Julie, you went a little over 5, but I didn't stop you because I didn't talk about it. And besides that, you were interrupted a few times. So just keep that in mind that I'm not trying to cut off applause. I'm just trying to keep everybody in tune with the rules so that I don't have to cut off a speaker. So with that, Brianna, go ahead, and Kevin, you're on deck.
At many, more than one meeting, we've heard the quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world." We've heard it. My own building principal says, "Get off the bench and be the change you want to see at UHS." The verb here, the action, the operative, the directive, the mission is be. In the English, geeks among us will likely be able to recite all the forms of to be. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, grow, remain, appear, become, seem. So allow me to make a few statements using these forms. I am the change I want to see at UHS. He, behind me, she, behind me, is here at UHS. We are together changing UHS. There was word of change being imposed upon UHS. But we were sure that the leadership would not allow for an inappropriate imposition. Because we will be among the first to speak out and speak up. Be good, be brave. That's what my daughter and I say to each other each morning as we depart. And that's why I'm here now speaking to you. Because we have a history of being more than just a certified staff among our buildings, while others were busy making decisions elsewhere, choosing directions for our buildings as though we were being ourselves inaccurately. We will not stagnate in good standing on reports, but we will, however, remain rooted and invested in our students' growth in our buildings. We will remain, as in have been and will continue to be. Decisions that affect us are appearing sneaky and misguided and contrived and manipulated. I fear that the good faith efforts from central office to improve systemic racism are actually becoming degradations. How can we take away 3 positions of certified staff at 2 buildings each, open it up to 6 positions that I maybe can be right about this, I could be wrong, but if those are going to be non-certified positions, I worry that we are going to fill those positions with people that are not certified, but maybe would appear more racially diverse, as if we can't trust them in a certified position. I don't want them to be in that position because that is systemic racism, and that's what we're against. They can earn certified positions anywhere, and removing them to make them non-certified is degrading. This seems wrong and contrived. All of these statements use be as it relates to a location or a state, and isn't that the truth? We're here at our buildings when others are not. We dwell there. Our names are on doors and student schedules and parent lips when others are not. So please, don't excuse me and don't dismiss me if I'm coming across strongly. My principal taught me that I should be straight and firm when communicating. Hear me clearly. We at UHS are together. Let no man or woman put us asunder.
Dan, you're on deck.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kevin Erlanger. I'm the technology coordinator at Urbana Middle School, and I've been there for 29 years, in the district for 29 years. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our deans for their dedication and commitment to our students, our staff, and families. I am truly disappointed by this decision. Equally, I'm disappointed and shocked that there was no communication between our administration, our higher administration, and our buildings when this decision was made. I first heard of this decision yesterday, and as I mentioned, I was very shocked. As a technology coordinator, I have the opportunity to move around the building and spend time in teachers' classrooms working with students and teachers. It gives me a chance to see what the deans are actually doing. I see the deans in action. It seems that the impression is that they're simply there to give out negative consequences. This could not be further from the truth. I watch our deans work hard every day to develop a rapport with our kids and our teachers. They have restorative conversations with our students and try to help them succeed. I see students seeking out deans when they need help or advice, and they have a lot of choices in our building. They can go to a lot of people, and they choose the deans. I see them working with teachers to come up with strategies to help the students. I also see them in conversations with parents and families. Is our discipline system perfect? Absolutely not. Does it need to improve? Yes. Do we need to completely throw out the system for something that has yet to be determined or developed? No, absolutely not. I would ask the board members to talk to our deans and building principals. Find out what they really do. Spend some time with them if you can. We can improve our system if we work together. If this decision is made, it'll have real ramifications. Just today, I helped a teacher upload a resume to a site for a job. Another teacher asked me to be a reference, and a third told me she's applying for another job and has an interview. We've already lost many talented people in the past year in this district. Some choosing to retire early, some leaving because of work conditions. Many of these people are people we shouldn't have lost. Talented, dedicated individuals with critical information, knowledge, and experience. This decision will likely cause, if it is made, will likely cause more good people to leave. I don't want to see that happen. I've been told that this decision was not about people, but about personnel. That it was a decision to eliminate positions. I guess I can't afford to think like that. I'm a teacher, and my students are not personnel. Thank you.
Stephanie Menhold-Smith will be on deck.
Good evening. My name is Dan Bechtel, and I've been teaching math at the secondary level in Urbana for 19 years. Over all of that time, I've been present for many changes, both structural and administrative, in the district. None of these changes have been easy on the staff or the students, but I'd like to believe that all of them have taken place in the spirit of working together, teacher with administrator, to do what's right for our kids. The collaborative nature of our relationship with administrators at both the school and the district level has been the glue that has held us together through the difficult changes that we have been asked to enact. This spirit is one of the major reasons that I've chosen to make Urbana High School my home as opposed to taking higher paying jobs in other districts. When the plan to replace the deans and ultimately the entire disciplinary structure at the secondary level was reported to us at the faculty meeting yesterday afternoon, I felt none of this spirit present. The idea that the central office administration would make a decision that completely changes the only system of discipline and classroom management that every student and teacher in the building has ever known, without first talking to us about all of the reasons for this change and giving us some plan on how to replace the system in a clear and ordered manner, seems much more the stuff of bipartisan national politics rather than decision-making at Urbana 116. I was disappointed, angry, sad, and frankly a little scared. And I apologize for this, but this is really important to me and to everybody behind me and to all the students that we have. And so I'm probably going to hit on the other side of 5 minutes, and I apologize, but I'll read as best I can. Sorry. It was clear to me from the responses of my colleagues that I was not alone in my feelings. Every major organizational change model stresses the importance of clear communication, along with a shared vision and a stated reason for that change. Why was this not a focal point here? The change was very specifically kept under wraps and revealed wholesale yesterday, with no communication or explanation at all. No clear reasons were given, and only the vaguest of plans was in place. Whose voices were included in this decision? What students, parents, teachers, or building level administrators had an opportunity for input? I decided that I needed to look a little deeper and find the reasons, or perhaps the lack thereof, for myself. Not only am I a math teacher, but my significant other works as a data analyst for the Urbana Police Department. Earlier this year, she introduced me to the idea of a disparity ratio. Now, this is a fairly simple metric that compares the percent of the total population and the percent of that population represented in other areas. In other words, if we take the percent of kids getting referrals and compare it to the percent of kids that make up the student body, we should expect them to be the same. So if we take the two and divide them, the result should be 1. Any amount over 1 represents an overrepresentation. Any amount under 1 means there's an underrepresentation. Now, it was my hope that if I looked at our data over the last 3 years, which is the only thing that we've really had access to, I'd be able to show that our disparity ratio for African American referrals and suspensions was getting closer and closer to 1. I was hoping that I'd be able to argue and refute any heretofore unstated reasons for these changes and make the argument that we should go back to the way that we've been doing things. Unfortunately, when looking at the data, this outcome is not what I had hoped. While the overall numbers have gone down, the disparity ratio in each of these categories has either maintained or increased over the course of the last 3 years. At the end of the 2016-2017 school year, our referral disparity ratio is 1.57 for African Americans. What this means is that an African American student is 57% more likely than should be expected to receive a referral based on the school makeup. In that same period of time, 72.4% of the students receiving suspensions were African American, as compared to their 37.1% makeup of the student body. This means that that disparity ratio for suspensions was 1.95, which means 95% more likely than should be expected. And both of those numbers are up from the previous 2 years. Honestly, this disparity says loud and clear to me that we absolutely need to make a change for our kids. And it would be asinine to assume that it was the hope of the seemingly few people that made this decision that one of us would get there on our own and share this with others. And had someone come to school yesterday and made this case to us, we possibly wouldn't be in the situation with all these people behind us saying that this is something that shouldn't be done this way. But it doesn't change the fact that this is true and that we need to do something about it. Now, I say what I'm going to say with the recognition that I'm only one teacher and I only speak for myself. But with that said, I propose 2 possible ideas for the 2018-2019 school year. 1, a focused secondary study year with the purpose of developing a new disciplinary and support structure that aligns with the overall vision of the district and the needs of our students to be implemented the following school year. Taking this sort of study year with a focused purpose of creating the right system in the right way would allow both for the solidification of a vision and the inclusion of the voices of our students, parents, and staff as we move forward. It would also allow all of us the time to do the work towards this much-needed change correctly through building staff-level support of these programs while knowing there's a system already in place to maintain the safety of our schools and our students. 2, a restructuring of the district-level administration to include a district-wide data analyst with the sole responsibility of mining our academic and behavioral data to identify and help prioritize the specific areas of need and concern in our schools, report these findings to schools, school board, and community, and create data-based metrics by which to judge our collective growth towards the shared vision we have. For too long, the responsibility of gathering and disaggregating this data upon which we profess to guide our decisions has fallen on teachers and administrators not trained in this arena, and this is too important to get wrong. I believe in my school and in our ability to make changes that will benefit all of our students. I believe in our will to change and our willingness to make the hard choices when our kids are at stake. I believe that our kids can accomplish any task that we set for them, and that we need to be sure that we aren't putting barriers in their way that are not of their own making. But I also believe that the only way to work towards these changes is together and in a thoughtful manner. With all due respect to my colleagues and friends in the ranks of the Central Office Administration, this was not done with either idea in mind. You are better than this, and if we work together, we can show that we are all better than this. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I hope that you are willing to listen to the need to make this decision the right way so that we can all feel like this is once again the home that we have come to love. Thank you.
Sarah Jones is on deck.
Stephanie Menold-Smith. I'm a social worker at UMS. Daring greatly means the courage to be vulnerable. It means to show up and be seen, to ask for what you need, to talk about how you're feeling, to have the hard conversations. That's Brene Brown. Vulnerability is a concept I have written about often in my current administration program that I am in now. I believe we have to lead by example with openness, honesty, and courage. In the past couple of days, there have been many conversations among us. For me, the level of concern for our students and staff are the forefront of this conversation. I believe in our students, and I believe in our staff. This is my 3rd year as a school social worker in Urbana, but my 8th year in the profession. I have seen a lot over that short time. I have listened to so many students, parents, and teachers share their hearts, concerns, and passions. I believe true change happens when we listen to those in the front lines and those we are making decisions for. This empowers people, and this creates real and meaningful change. When I first heard of the news of eliminating the deans, my heart sunk for those staff members, for their livelihoods, and for the amount of time and dedication they have put into their work. For the kids in this district. My co-occurring thought was our students. My heart sank again. As a mental health professional, I am all for proactive interventions and support for kids. I have so much passion for meeting kids where they are and giving them everything they need to be the best possible individual and community member. I will choose to believe that our USD leadership also believes that. But I won't say that it is easy. I also believe in accountability and consequences when necessary. My biggest concern is that the decision to eliminate the deans was made without involving the very people that work with our students day in and day out. I can't speak for others necessarily, but I do have my perspective. I believe our teachers see the need for change. I hear their hearts. I believe our deans see the need for change. I hear their hearts, and I have heard their frustrations. I believe that our building administration, I hope, sees the need for change. I definitely know that the mental health staff see the need for change. I just wish these key people were given the chance, that we were empowered and guided by leadership to have a voice in making those changes. I have so many ideas for providing services to kids. I just wish we could be heard and given the supports we need to make these necessary changes. I'm not sure where all of this is headed, but I do hope that the building is included in whatever happens. I would love to see the dean position not eliminated if it needs to be restructured. The individuals in our middle school dean positions are assets to our kids. I wish they were given the chance to do the real work that they have always wanted to do. I hear them say all the time how much they want to do more, and they wish they were given the resources to do that. Communicating with them directly is all it takes to hear their hearts and their passion. If there is a concern with a specific dean, then I would hope that would be addressed individually. I remember when I started here in 2015, not that long ago, that many people kept saying the district is a family. I so wish I could say I still believe it wholeheartedly. I'm starting to question it. I want to believe it. I know many of us want to. We are pleading to stop creating this atmosphere of confusion and fear. I know that the administration has to make changes at times. I know that. But the way things are happening communicates that power is being exerted onto the staff and students instead of empowering us. We are just asking to be heard, to be valued, and to be trusted that we believe in what is best for our students. We have so many ideas and passions. Give us the chance to use them. As that is what I have been taught great leaders will do.
Eric Morrow is on deck.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Jones, and I'm a teacher at Urbana High School, and I am a voice from one of your possible futures. Yesterday afternoon, our principal announced a new district-implemented program for next year for UHS and UMS that involves firing our 3 certified deans and replacing them with 6 uncertified people whose jobs, pay, and qualifications are still clearly undefined. I came to work for USD 116 after 16 years in a school district so dysfunctional, the 18 members of my school's English department had closed ranks to protect our students. Every program the district implemented was secret, top down, politically motivated, and developed without teacher input. And we resisted as a staff every single one of them with every tactic available. When I came here to this school district, I was flabbergasted. People from the main office, people from the schools, staff, administration, they talked to each other. In the school I came here from, we never spoke to anyone above the teacher level without a witness. And that was 4 years ago. And yesterday in the meeting, I watched that trust disappear, evaporate. So if you're interested in rebuilding that trust and not becoming the horrible place I came here from, here are a few questions you might consider answering. First, why did you resort to underhanded, secret, it seems politically motivated, disruptive programming practices that send us a message that we are not good enough, no matter what we do? Why are the people who make these decisions invisible in the process? And why are they not the ones who stand in front of us and tell us what they decided and accept the consequences of that? Where is the justice and the equity, not only for the staff, but for the 90% of our students who come to school ready and willing to learn, and who also depend on our deans for their safety at countless school events? Why has the district not used their money and time to hire truancy officers? Attendance is an enormous factor in whether or not students are successful. Why has the district not provided more teachers so we can give our students more diverse programming and smaller class sizes to help deal with low reading levels, gaps in writing skills, and failure rates in elementary school? Or to sub out teachers so that we can be involved in generating solutions with you? Or to provide career and technical programs that many of our students not only need, but would buy into in a red-hot second? Since realistically, the staff for this new program will not be hired and the procedures designed until this summer, what in the world makes district leadership think that 2 days in August are going to be enough for the staff to learn how to use it effectively? And finally, the crux of the situation. Why is the trust of the staff who work directly with students on a daily basis suddenly unworthy of consideration? considering that we live in this horrible time right now when not only we but our students are dealing with school shootings, ignorant and brutal national leadership, student walkouts, teacher strikes, and widespread societal disillusionment, the implementation of this program isn't only tone deaf, it walks the rough edge of cruelty. Let me tell you, vision from your future. Top-down decision-making made behind closed doors without input from stakeholders who have to carry out the change, implemented before a plan is securely in place, is bad leadership. And if you hear nothing else tonight, listen to someone who lived this. You do not want to put teachers in a position in which they will close ranks against you for the good of their students. We are a helping profession, but you mistake us in thinking that we will passively sit by and allow terrible leadership that will have disastrous consequences. Our students, our citizens, the people who vote in this city deserve better. Thank you.
Evan Harrington is next. Aaron Harrington.
Hello? Okay. I'd like to say good evening to the Urbana School Board, Central Office administrators and staff, and others that are here tonight. I've been in education over 20 years, well over 20, and this is my 8th year at Urbana High School. I believe during those time here at Urbana that my talents have grown immensely, and I love being a dean at Urbana High School. I believe that the position of a dean is a critical role to the success here at Urbana High School. I often hear stories of other people that are telling staff members and that are telling me, they say when they come into Urbana and they walk in and they say the place feels different. And what I mean by that, they like what they feel. And what I believe that all results from is the culture, not only at Urbana High School, but Urbana School District. And we as deans help maintain that culture within Urbana High School. We have veteran students, and I mean those are students that are not in their first year of the school, telling newer students, say, hey, we don't do that here at Urbana. Students are policing students. We don't do that here at Urbana. And I believe that is part of our culture. We have a culture of expectations. We have a culture of help. We have a culture of assistance. And we also have a culture of safety. We often have students, parents, and other stakeholders who will notify us of potential situations. They will call us, email, just so we can help void off circumstances, because they want to help maintain that culture at Urbana. And I know many people in this room can testify that there are families that have made decisions on where they want to live because they want their child to go to Urbana schools. My role as a dean at Urbana High School is more than a consequencer or a disciplinarian. I'm here to help students. I'm here to help them become better decision makers before and after they leave Urbana or graduate from Urbana. I would even say that current and former students would say that deans make a difference in their life. Now, we do have unfortunate circumstances that do happen, but we always try to avoid them from occurring, and due process always considered. Another layer of support would be awesome. And I think it would be beneficial as a whole for Urbana High School. I have received comments about the efforts of the deans from many people in this room. And please know that we value those comments. And those comments are motivations for us to continue to help all students at Urbana. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to speak to something a little bit different from most of our speakers so far this evening, but I think there are actually some really important connections. Good evening. A week from tomorrow at 10 a.m., hundreds of thousands of students will walk out of their classrooms in memory of the students and staff who were killed at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School and in support of safe schools. Dozens of districts across the nation are actively supporting their students in doing so. They are providing students with time and spaces to hold moments of silence or assemblies outside of their schools. I work with Urbana High School students every day as a substitute, a tutor, and a club sponsor. Our students in Urbana are asking for this same support. They want to know that the adults in their lives share their concerns, their fears, and their pain. The school board can and should authorize staff to participate in a student walkout because our students need to see their teachers standing alongside them. Today, a student said that students want to walk out not just to support the students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, but also the staff, 3 of whom were killed, and many others who didn't think twice before protecting other people's sons and daughters. Our students want to support us. They deserve for their district, their teachers, their administrators, and their school board to support them. As I've been listening to the comments of other people, a common theme has been the support that our deans at the high school, and I know this is true of the middle school, give to our students. A lot of our students are in a lot of pain, not just about the school shooting events, but about a lot of things that are happening in their lives. And there are things that we can do to make their lives better, and when we have that opportunity, we should do it. Thank you.
Michelle and Kowski on deck.
My name is Matthew Murray. I've worked in the district. This is my 15th year as a librarian at Urbana High School, and I'm addressing the overhaul or the sudden announcement of an overhaul of the behavior and discipline program. The trends of behavior at the high school have been moving in a positive direction as far as I can see. Implementation of restorative practices is moving forward and with buy-in from the staff. Our referrals are down, suspensions are down. Is there any evidence that the new plan, if a plan actually exists, will significantly improve on these trends? Multiple times in the recent past, I have heard visitors who have been in other local public high schools comment to me on how safe and calm our building is, how friendly staff and students are, and how remarkably positive the atmosphere is at our school. And that's something that I've always told people when I meet them, that is something I'm very proud of, and that all of our staff are quite proud of that. Therefore, I ask the board, when you consider whether to approve this plan, what specific UHS data, events, or critically negative trend, and critically, justifies such a radical, disruptive, immediate, and unprecedented overhaul of our system? And then I want to address just some issues related to respect for faculty, students, community, and the effects on morale. The way this policy change was conceived, enacted, and announced reflects a disregard for the knowledge, experience, and expertise of the faculty and staff. Why was there no consultation with non-administrative faculty and staff? What student, parent, community involvement in creating, planning, and implementing this policy has there been, if any? Why was the plan announced to faculty with no substantive details provided, no person or persons available who could answer questions and concerns about this plan? Why was a plan that will require a complete overhaul and reshuffling of procedures, responsibilities, and protocol around student behavior and discipline announced with only 5 months lead-up time before it is to be implemented? And of that 5 months, over half that is the summer break. I am very upset about the way this policy change has come about. It suggests to me that the Urbana way, which people have mentioned, of collaboration and constructive input between faculty, staff, and district level administration is something that is no longer valued by the leadership in this district, and that makes me very sad.
Jenna Finch on deck.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Kowski. I've been teaching for 13 years, and 5 of those proudly at Urbana High School. It would be easy for me to sit back and say this is not my fight. My family already has plans to move out of state, and I already have let administration know I will not be returning in the fall. It would be easy for me to say, I don't need to worry about how this will turn out, because I won't be here to deal with it. However, I find that I would be doing my colleagues and my students a disservice to say this is someone else's fight. While I may be leaving, I care a great deal about Urbana High School, the community, and the students and families we serve. The 3 deans and their predecessors have worked tirelessly to show that the role of the dean is not a symbol of punishment, but a support for the students and teachers to lean on when they need help. They build relationships with students, families, and teachers, and work with them to find restorative solutions whenever possible. These are the people the students see keeping them safe, not just during the school day, but also before and after school, at athletic events, concerts, plays, and more. At a time when the students are concerned with the safety and security of their school, the only message they will hear from central office and the school board is how the deans they have come to trust and rely on to keep them safe are being taken away. How are students supposed to feel safe and secure when those they have trusted were taken away without explanation and replaced with those who are a complete unknown? This decision disregards the #1 parameter listed on the strategic plan. In decision-making, student well-being will be given the highest priority. Our mission statement says that we engage each student, each family, and the entire community. Yet this decision ignores not only those we serve, but was made by those who do not work in our building and therefore do not understand the vital role the deans play in keeping UHS running smoothly. This decision disregards the voices of everyone it affects, and those that made it did not even have the courage to tell us themselves nor provide justification for the decision. This lack of transparency is a symbol not only of a breakdown in communication, but also in the trust and respect of those you serve. I ask the board to seriously question the plan that before them and the implications it has moving forward. The way forward needs to include the voices of those it affects so we can rebuild the trust that has been broken and the change can have the positive impact we all want it to have. Thank you.
Hello. For a year and a half at USD 116 at UHS, we have focused on the vast, important, so important concept of looking at education and of ourselves as educators through the lens of racial equity. I will not go into our history with racism and multiculturalism. That is not why I'm here. I am here as an educator for 30 years, a UHS teacher for just under 6 years. For all of those 30 years, I have been committed to professional development and have maintained that largely on my own dime in order to be always the best teacher I can be. But teachers do not go it alone. I am a colleague within my small department and in the wider school community, and all of us, deans, teachers, support staff, administration, all of us are focused on students. For a year and a half, I have learned at professional development meetings that to listen, I must be still. I must not react, in order to show that I am listening, not planning my response. Speak for yourselves. I do not plan my response. I respond with my heart, often too loudly, often too fiercely. My feelings, my, to be honest, well-informed mind. But I learned about dyads and triads, talking sticks and discourse, 1 and 2. I learned, in quotes, friends, I learned to do this. I never use these tactics in my classroom. My students, my charges, truly the second. I have daughters, the fourth love of my life. My students are my concern, my center, my professional driver, why I teach. I hear, learn to listen, learn to engender trust. My friends, the counselors, listen. The deans listen. I trust them. The students trust us. We are a teaching and learning community. When I came to Urbana, I was told, we are family. Whose family? Who at central office knows me, knows my kids, knows their hearts, knows the one who lost his father, the one who lost her brother? Who can name any of them? Who at central office can match the incredible brain trust and heart trust that UHS boasts and is losing daily, monthly, annually? Decades, centuries of teaching experience. Our deans taught. Our deans know these kids. Can those who propose this plan match their experience, their passion, their love? Show me the data. Show me. Make me trust that you know one student, our students, the way the teachers and the deans do. Convince me my students would trust you the way they trust the deans. Convince me. I believe in multiculturalism. You don't know me, but I lived multiculturalism. Tell me who among you speaks multiple languages, grew up as a minority. Tell me, as Charlemagne said 1400 years ago, who has a second language, has a second soul. Tell me you even have a soul. Tell me you are not only computerized data analysis, but you are thinking with the 21st century goals of critical and creative and multicultural thinking. And show me you have even considered consulting us, the teachers, the deans, and your hearts. Thank you.
Steve, you're on deck.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Scott Dowds. I live at 2704 Susan Stone Drive. I am the parent of 2 middle schoolers. I actually am a graduate from UMS and UHS myself. I graduated the class of 95. So, I know what the district used to be. I know what the district has become. I know that when my wife and I decided to put down roots, that the Urbana School District was one that we fell in love with immediately because of the passion and dedication of the teachers and administration, as is evidenced here tonight by all the speakers. And if there's been one constant that I've heard tonight, and one constant that my wife and other parents who I'm speaking on behalf of tonight have brought up, it's communication. My boys both went to Thomas Paine, and the communication there was excellent. Our principal, Sandy Cooper, before she retired, was great at putting out information. The teachers were wonderful about talking to us, and we've had, unfortunately, a little bit less communication at the middle school level. Not trying to pin fault on anybody or anything, but communication is definitely a key component to how we feel about the way the school system operates. And the deans in particular, my oldest son has had some issues with bullying, and we've worked very closely with the dean at the middle school for his class because of the issues he's had. And I know you can't avoid issues in middle school and high school. I mean, these are teenagers. I know that that's not a realistic goal, but the deans have been excellent in their work to help us work through these issues excuse me, and find resolutions. I know a lot of what's been said tonight is that this communication seemed to come out of nowhere. I can tell you that my wife, who deals mainly with the school because she's a work and home parent, has expressed frustration at the lack of communication. I know other parents, middle school parents, high school parents, even grade school parents who are looking to come to the middle school in the next year or two, have expressed frustration at the level of communication. And this current issue seemed to have come out of nowhere and has really stirred up a lot of that feeling again. Now, I've worked with some of you on various other projects. I know some of you personally, and I know that you all have the best interest of the school district in mind. I don't question that. Whether or not this issue was done with buy-in from the teachers or the administration, however it was done, I can't speak to, obviously, but it does seem like it was kind of dropped out of nowhere. And it does seem like maybe it could have been handled better, could have been handled a little differently. My hope, I guess, is that going forward, that there is some more open and honest communication between the administration and the parents, the teachers, the staff, and that some more buy-in could be sought from all those different facets so as to make sure that decisions like this if they are the best, and obviously I don't know any of the details, so I can't speak to it, but if this is a better decision, then put it out there. Excuse me. Put it out there to the parents, to the staff. Let us see it. Let us, debate it. Let us talk about it, and get the buy-in. Because, like I said, I've grown up in Urbana. I've lived here almost all my life, except for a little bit of time at ISU. And this community has always been a community. You don't find that everywhere. So my hope is that going forward, we can rely on that and we can play to that strength that Urbana has always had of being a community. Thank you.
Rhonda, you're on deck.
Hello, my name is Steve Vaughn. I work for the Illinois Education Association. Urbana is one of my locals, and I just need to express how incredibly proud I am of this group of folks. Their passion and how articulate they are is a credit to them, to the district, and you should be proud of them as well. So I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for being here and expressing yourselves so well. Honestly, I didn't know if I would bother putting a slip in because I felt like people were covering the ground pretty well. But I do want to remind folks of a couple of things from a union perspective. First of all, the value of having a unionized employee workforce is that for everyone's sake, decisions are made better because the process is a shared decision-making process. And the value of that is the people who are actually doing the work are instrumental in making the right decision. When decisions are made without the folks on the ground being a part of that process, they will not be made well. And I think at a minimum, what we've heard tonight is that there is a lesson in process to be reminded of here. And that brings me to the other thing that I wanted to tell you, and it's more a story than it is a point. But when I was called early in the morning and got wind of this, just before these now infamous staff meetings, I responded with a conversation with the leadership, and I suggested that they put in a demand to bargain letter. And the reason why this is interesting is because they really didn't know what I was talking about. Now, I represent folks at 5 other school districts, and I have locals at both DAC and at the U of I. All my other union leadership would know what I was talking about if I suggested they look into a demand to bargain letter. It is a credit to the collaborative process that has been normative here at Urbana. That they don't know what I'm talking about when I suggest that a unilateral decision process requires a union response to demand to bargain the decision and the impact of that decision. So I forgot to mention I'm also a parent. Most of you know this. My youngest is a freshman at UHS. So this is very personal to me. And I have always felt like, of all my locals, I was proudest of Urbana because, well, it's home and has been since '91, but also because this is a place where I felt like things were happening that there was such a steep hill in other places. It would be hard to even imagine the sort of progressive, cooperative, collaborative movement that I've seen in the past here at Urbana. Please do not squander that. That is a gift to the community. It's a gift to the parents and the kids that are in the schools. And it is something that it's not too late to fix in this instance, and I would encourage you to do that. And I will be watching for your cooperation.
Hi there. My name's Rhonda Driscoll. So I earned my 25-year pin this year at the beginning of the school year. So I love Urbana. I must say, though, that the events of the last, I don't know, few hours, few days, I don't know, maybe even a little before that, have made me feel pretty sad. And I guess as far as specifically for the dean's job, there's also an important, as far as just replacing the dean, all of our deans have also been classroom teachers, and I think that is a vital part of how they can do their job. Straddling that line between teachers and students. So the other part that brings me up here tonight, and again, it kind of points to the climate of the school right now. I'm going to read a statement from a young colleague of mine who is too fearful of retaliation to speak up herself, and that is really a shame. On February 26th, I received an email from Dr. Owen introducing a new social media hashtag for our district, Teach Urbana. According to the email, the purpose of this hashtag is to promote the reasons why teaching and working in Urbana is unique, inspiring, and so rewarding. The email detailed our district's plan to advertise the hashtag at recruiting fairs, on the website, and other places as a way to showcase the wonderful things about the teaching profession, our schools, the staff, and our students. With all due respect, the decision to eliminate our dean positions for the 18-19 school year does not make being part of our district feel unique, inspiring, or rewarding. The decision to eliminate this position came without collaboration or transparency with the very people whose job it is to teach Urbana. The decision does not make us feel unique. The transparency and collaboration that made our district unique is gone. The decision does not make us feel inspired. It makes us feel confused, frustrated, and unheard. The decision does not make us feel rewarded. It makes us feel like we are being forced into change without a voice. We are branding ourselves with this hashtag, but does it truly represent a school environment that is unique, inspiring, and rewarding? Are we living up to our brand? What made Urbana unique to me was the transparency and collaboration in decision-making that we were given. As teachers, we are the ones who see the consequences of decisions that are made by the school board in our day-to-day work. We should be afforded and entrusted with input towards decisions that impact the days we spend doing what's best for our kids. At the very least, this decision should have been delivered by those who made it, allowing for questions and concerns to be voiced in a productive way. Eliminating that element of collaboration broke my trust and eliminated what made our district unique. What inspires me about Urbana is seeing our staff, deans included, coming together to do what is best for our students. What inspires me is to see our staff working together to solve problems, encourage each other, and support our kids. How can I be inspired when I don't feel like we are doing what is truly best for our kids? What is rewarding to me is seeing our kids be successful. What is rewarding is seeing our kids know that the adults in the building, every single adult in the building, cares about them and wants to do what's best. That includes our deans. They are the point of contact for our kids who are struggling, a refuge for kids to talk about their concerns and hurts and struggles, and a force of safety and peace for the whole school. Losing them is nowhere close to rewarding. Per an email from our building principal, the structure of the deans historically has functioned as a punitive system, whose primary responsibility is managing discipline and consequences for students. The use of the word historically must be referring to a time before I was employed by the district, because none of the experiences that I have seen with the 3 deans at our school reflects that. I have had conversations with Ms. Thomas about students who are struggling in my class. The level of understanding she has for students as individuals, for what they have going on outside the classroom, for what might help them be more successful in class, it blows my mind. And it's her first year in the position. During my first year of teaching, Mr. Morrow checked in with me almost every week to see how I was doing, offer his guidance and support. When I returned from a leave this year to a class that was struggling academically, Mr. Morrow came in to talk to them about life after high school. For an hour, he shared his knowledge, his inspiration, and his heart. To this day, I still have students talk about what Mr. Morrow shared in his lesson. What about that work was punitive? What about that work was focused on punishment and discipline? We must be working from a very historical definition. Mr. Luffman, Ms. Thomas, and Mr. Morrow are invaluable assets to our culture, our building culture. Anyone who has taught at UHS for a day would tell you that. To project that their role is simply punitive is an insult to the work they do every day. Is this now what it means to teach Urbana? To eliminate collaboration between teachers, administration, and the school board? To make decisions without hearing the voices of those who have to deal with the consequences of these decisions? To eliminate one of the most vital positions and build our vital positions to our building culture and community without a concrete plan to replace it, and without communicating this decision to the very staff it will impact the most? I hope that is not what it means to teach Urbana now. Thank you.
Chuck, you're on deck.
Hi. Hi, I'm Isaac. I'm a sophomore at UHS.
I'm Theo. I'm a freshman at UHS.
Make the light green.
Ah.
Otherwise people.
What? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, so as I'm sure you've all heard about the walkout that's being planned for next Wednesday by students, and this is like a nationwide walkout, kind of in memorial for the Parkland shooting. And we're here to ask for support from the district in this student-led effort. Since the Parkland shooting, and in that matter, since every shooting, we've received no response from the district about safety and mental health within our school. As a lot of people have already said tonight, I've come to really enjoy being in this district and the transparency from the district and administration. But recently, I've not felt this at all. We're here tonight to ask the district to let teachers walk out with us along with millions of others at 10 a.m. on March 14th. And we're also here tonight to ask that the consequences for this walkout range farther than just disciplinary consequences.
Yeah, I would agree with what Isaac said, and I'd also like to say that I as well really think this is a unique community, as many people have said tonight. And I think that if the administration can allow the teachers to walk out along with the students and be able to express their support for the students, that will strengthen the bond between students and teachers that I think is unique to this community. And yeah, I think that the walkout is not something that is supposed to be or is at all about students versus teachers or students versus administration. And so yeah, we'd like to ask for the school board to let teachers walk out along with students on March 14th.
I've talked to a lot of students that go to other schools and other districts around the area, and I've heard from them is that for them this has really been a fight that they've had to take up with the administration, and we trust our administration. We want to do this with them, and but that we will be walking out on the 14th, and so we hope we have your support. But yeah.
I've been in the district 27 years, so I'm not quite the dinosaur that Erlanger is, but I have seen some things. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I think it's been pretty well established that people are upset, people feel hurt, and that a lot of trust has been broken. However, I will say that I think it's very dangerous to make decisions in a vacuum, and that's what's happened. I rarely see anyone from central office at the middle school. And obviously, board members, you have other things to do. So I would just like to suggest something as an invitation. Come to the high school. Come to the middle school while we are conducting classes. Sub at the middle school or the high school. You will then see what we are dealing with every day, but more importantly, get a feel for the tenor in these buildings. Maybe more importantly, shadow one of the deans for a day. See what it is that they actually do. See what it is that the impact that they have on these kids. Making these decisions without actually seeing this in action, I think, is very, very irresponsible. And I think if we were to see some of you in the buildings doing this, it would be a great first step to rebuilding some of that trust that's been broken.
Manette Kretz, future Urbana parent, USD 116 employee for 11 years, and current UEA president. Everybody behind me knows I need that. Good evening. I'm here this evening to proactively make note of concerns surrounding shifts in disciplinary systems at UHS and UMS, and more specifically, the current positions attached to these systems. Each of you, speaking directly to the board, will be presented with a RIF list at the next meeting, a list of which will include 6 dean positions. Please note that historically, RIFs are only made due to financial necessity or declining enrollment, both of which are not the reasons behind these RIFs. Thus, I encourage you to do as I am. Question. Question why. Question if this is what's best for our students and our schools, or if there are other options and possibilities. Question the other options and possibilities that have been explored. Question the process of what information, data, and research has proven this to be the best option. Question who was involved in the decision-making process. Question the timeline of the process. Question when an attempt to problem solve within the current system was made. Question the language of elimination and replacing versus adding, adapting, and training. Question how this process and decision may impact the relationship between UEA and the district for many years to come. To be crystal clear, we, UEA, are not questioning the need to change our systems of inequity. We are questioning the process, planning, and lack thereof. If in a week's timeline, any of your questions are still left unanswered, or if the answers given are unclear or underdeveloped, know that we still have time to get those questions answered. We still have time to do this right, without flaws, without unknowns, with transparency, with a purposeful and collaborative intent. Thank you.
I have. If anyone else wishes to address the board, now would be the time. All right, seeing none, we'll close off the citizen statement portion of our agenda and proceed to move on. Do we have a call for executive meeting or session this evening? No, we do. Motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. In practice with citizen statements, we receive and listen. It is not our practice to engage in discussion. We don't do that. So there will be board reports at the end of the meeting and administrative reports at the end of the meeting. Otherwise, we're going to move through our agenda. So administrative briefings, we have the 2018 working cash summer projects.
Summer 2018 working cash capital projects. As estimated, we have the Aquatic Center, new pool pack HVAC system with an estimate of $300K to bring that through completion. Urbana High School will receive a new wood floor replacement in the Oscar Adams Gym, roughly estimated at $180K. The athletic complex and track and field.
Pat, I'm going to suggest let's take about a 3 or 4 minute break and give people a chance to retire to concentrate.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Everybody being so quiet on
Thank you, John. Summer 2018 working cash capital projects. Already stated the Aquatic Center and the new pool pack HVAC system with that estimate of $300K. The Urbana High School Oscar Adams Gym floor replacement, rough estimate at $180K. The athletic complex, the track resurfacing, track and field for $80K. The sum total request would be $560K roughly. The Urbana High School Oscar Adams Gym floor replacement and athletic complex track resurfacing are going out to bid fairly soon. So you will be seeing that come out very soon. So we hope to make a decision on that as soon as the bid opening comes.
Roughly, did we get the life expectancy out of these services that we should have?
I believe so. I think the track and field is probably a couple years past due. We have had repairs on it over the last couple years. So it's definitely due. It's past due. Its life expectancy in the Oscar Adams Gym floor is going to become unsafe at some point in time if we don't repair it.
just so you know, when Oda Dowsett left, he was predicting that the Gauntlet on the gym floor, and this was actually a year before he left, so he was predicting it would last another 3 to 5 years. What we found was after it was resurfaced this past year, we had some pretty significant spaces in it on the actual playing floor that if you walk across it, you will see chips of the wood, because it's so thin that it's just not.
Any other questions of the map?
I was just curious if alternative surfaces were considered for the gym floor.
Yes, the gym floor was looked at, alternate flooring types. We're bidding 2 different type wood panels. So one would be the existing 1 3/8 thickness, and the other one would be 2 1/4 inch. And they're both maple surfaces. The 2 1/4 would alleviate installation time and prep time, so we'd be able to do it with a quicker window for that. So we looked at membrane surfaces and so forth.
Would that last longer as well, or is
Yes, yeah. And it would be more, I don't know how to say it, more bounce back, better for the athletes, less injury prone.
Other questions on that? This is a report, so we're bringing the 2 that you're open. Normally we approve this as a team, so it's just be on the next agenda.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so as some of you know, Ms. Valve has been working on several grants, and currently we know one of them was successful, received approximately $250,000, maybe a little more. All right, so that was fantastic news. And so one of the things that we've been looking at is how is it that we can, better transition kindergarten or preschool into kindergarten. So one of the things that we're using this funding for is for a tentatively 2-3 sessions for summer school starting in June, ending at 26th of July. We're really looking at a preschool program, transitioning students from preschool into kindergarten for next year. And so we're working with 24 teachers as well, and seeing how we can tie some different things in to make sure that we are better preparing students for kindergarten. Another component to that, this is on July 1, we have the acceleration law that is going into effect in July 1, as far as looking at a variety of possibly readmission criteria for students starting earlier than 5 years old going into kindergarten. So this is another way to ensure that we're taking an equity approach to providing opportunity for a variety of students to be able to be assessed and in the kindergarten. So we're really excited about the opportunity. I know Chris is writing for a couple of other grants as well to see how it is that we can continue bolstering that support. But early intervention for literacy is going to be extremely important. And so we're looking to have a significant turnout this summer. We've got about 206 students that will be transitioning to kindergarten next year. And so hopefully we'll be able to find, I hope based on all the students that we're really going to work hard to make sure we can support all the students. Currently, yes. That's the facility.
Time for students that are currently at the early childhood school.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
I had a question for you. So, has that actually been a change in the state of Illinois now to let children younger than 5 start kindergarten yet?
July 1.
July 1.
July
all right,
1.
Instead of the regular September 1.
Correct. Well, July 1 is the starting date when there is an acceleration policy that needs to be in place to provide parameters for children that might be under the age of 5. It may be that they accelerate for different grade levels. It might be for different, content areas or areas of learning. So a second grader who's reading at a 5th grade level, if it is that differentiation isn't possible within that class, they might accelerate it by the actual content area of the grade. So just looking at a variety of ways of how it is that we can best meet students' individual needs. And so that's going to be something that's definitely going to be on our study session in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Sam?
And this $250,000 grant, this covers the summer school program and then this possible acceleration option. I guess I'm just trying to.
What I
Yeah.
try and do is think about how it is that when we look at multiple resources or any type of program, how can we really maximize whatever resources we have? So if we're looking at acceleration, we're also looking at having these funds for a full day program for summer. How can we use that to best ensure that students are going to be have a better transition in their kindergarten? Okay. And so as we continue to look at other grant opportunities, what does that mean in regards to ensuring additional opportunities for a variety of more students in our community?
Okay. And it sounds like we'll have additional conversations about how, if at all, we might want to approach allowing kids to start kindergarten earlier than the state mandated September.
Yeah, the state passed a law
That
that will start July 1, that there has to be a policy in place and parameters where students, whether they're recommended by parents, teachers, facility, whatever it might be, will be evaluated according to a criteria. And that may mean that, yes, 4-year-olds would be eligible for kindergarten.
Okay. And that's a policy that we would develop in public session as a group, so that discussion
Yes.
is yet to happen. Okay. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Right. Other questions? Thank you and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Howells.
Good job, Chris.
Okay, we have no policy reviews. We do have action items tonight. We have 3, and I'm looking at them. We've all discussed them. I think we can handle it as a consent agenda, considering the time is particular. The first of those is the RFP for the UMH and UHS site plan for 2018. We've received a draft of that, and we've discussed it several times. 9.02 is print shop management and operational services renewal contract, and 9.03 is our Xerox copier equipment proposal, which is kind of an updating and renewing of that too. If anyone wishes to have a discussion about any of those items, we can pull it off, but otherwise I think we can handle it as a consent.
Can I make one comment? Because the draft that you had of the RFP has one slight modification, one slight addition. So I just want to point that out to you, just because it's different. In the list of properties, I had a number wrong. Instead of 900 South Race, it's actually 117 West Washington. That is the old Sunshine Grocery on the corner there. The numbering on Google Maps was just off, so we corrected that. And then the last thing is the sentence at the bottom of the first page. Campus land use study will commence as soon as the firm is selected, hopefully before the end of this school year, and the work will be completed by May 1st, 2019. The Board of Education will require updates about the process in September of 2018 and February of 2019. That's just so you have a little bit of a parameter of the time frame that we're looking at for this work.
Okay. With that addition, motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of 9.01, 02, and 03.
I move acceptance.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Carter?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Kowski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes. Vice President Rollins Gay and President Dennett?
Yes. Motion's carried. Now we'll move, this is a study session after all, so we'll move to our 4 study topics. The first of those is the one-to-one mentoring update. So, Tom?
Good evening, members of the board, administrators.
I'm Tom Howley. I coordinate the CU One-to-One Mentoring Program in the Urbana School District. I'm pleased to provide an update on the status of the program this evening. You have in front of you the community involvement update. The number of our mentors and volunteer hours are relatively stable. The fluctuation in the number of volunteer hours is due in part to personnel changes in the program. Our hiring of new staff over this past year aligns with district equity goals. 75% of our new hires are people of color. Our new staff include Caridia Shelby at Dr. Williams. Caridia is the mentoring and volunteer coordinator. Mujde Gazar at Leal and Wiley Elementary Schools. Mujde is also mentoring and volunteer coordinator. Deneb Bello Cordova at Yankee Ridge, and Kristen Davis at King Elementary. All four are in the role of mentoring and volunteer coordinator. Kristen has also taken on an additional role as volunteer coordinator at Urbana Middle School and Urbana High School. That position, the volunteer coordinator position, is new to the district. The focus of this position is to recruit and process new volunteers at the middle school and the high school. I mentioned the alignment with district equity goals. In our program, we have also focused our efforts to align trainings with district equity objectives. Examples include, for all of the new mentor trainings, we incorporate activities such as a cross the line activity. It's part of the training we do to help mentors understand the value and importance of connecting across differences. Many of our mentors are connecting across various differences, identity differences, whether that be racial or otherwise. We also this year had a social justice training where all mentors were invited to attend to go a little bit deeper into that question of how to best connect with somebody who may not look like they do. I would like to mention this is my second year in the position as coordinator for CU One-to-One in Urbana, and I am privileged to be in the role. The stories that I hear routinely of life-changing experiences from both mentors and mentees are numerous. So it really is a privilege to serve in this role. I'd invite all of you to also consider becoming mentors. If the time doesn't allow or permit for that, I would invite you to some of our trainings. We will have our next mentor trainings at the start of the new academic year in 2018. We've completed new mentor trainings for this year, but in September we'll have more. And so we'd love to have you join us and have you observe the process and engage in conversations with us, mentors as well as mentees. I'll close with that and invite any questions you may have.
Questions for Tom?
Thank you for your good work. I've always considered our mentoring program to be one of the jewels in Urbana School District crown. I didn't realize, and I should have, that our mentors go through training. Is that a relatively new requirement, or is it a requirement or just an optional thing? And is it sort of new in our history of our mentor program?
It is not new. It's a 2-hour training required of all new mentors. We ask them to undergo an interview, a brief interview. We do fingerprinting, background check. We ask for them to agree to a 2-hour training, and we do reference checks for all new mentors. The Part 1 training is required. We have a Part 2 training which is voluntary and open to anybody who's available. We encourage it for everybody, but it is voluntary.
So the training connect across differences in the social justice training, is that part of the mandate, the 2-hour one that everyone goes through, or part of the optional?
All of those are optional. The Part 1 training for new mentors is 2 hours, and that is required.
Gotcha.
That does incorporate some equity and social justice components, but that one is the required piece.
Seems like a really good idea. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else for Tom? So the drops in numbers that you noticed, do you expect a rebound in some of those?
I do. I think with transitions in personnel, that's to be expected a little bit. So much of what we do in recruitment is about networking and becoming familiar with contacts in the community. It's also part of the reason that we added the volunteer coordinator position at the middle school and the high school to really concentrate on that networking component and to make some concerted efforts in the area of recruitment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
UHS Restorative Practices Reports. Elaine? Laura, you want to deal with the lights?
That was not the right Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me. I went to Claire. A little closer? Is better?
Yeah.
I was too close last time. I seem to have the honor of always presenting here when there is a big crowd. So I wanted to clarify from the little agenda item that I'm presenting work that's being done at the high school, certainly not by me, but by many of the staff, faculty, and students there. So it's really important for me to say that I'm supporting and helping as much as I can, and they're doing the work. So this is going to be pretty parallel to the one I presented on the Urbana Middle School, and actually somewhat similar results. So I might go a little faster for some of those parts. So similar methodology, observations, discipline data, that's archival, and survey responses, which were lower than the middle school. 30% of students and staff responded. And as a response to that, I think we're going to collect the data earlier in the year this year. We did that later in May last year. So this is May 2017. And I think that was just a hairy time. So we'll try for after spring break this time. And just like with the middle school, just a cautionary note that that's a snapshot in time. People are being asked in May to talk about their experiences for the whole year. So we'll go over school climate data, discipline data, conflict circles, and use of restorative practices by staff, and recommendations. Our P is restorative practices for short. As with the middle school data, we're going to move away from grades next year, but want it to be consistent this year. And as you see, the school climate, by the 30% of people who participated, is positive. 32% of those also said they have been in a classroom circle. And it's always tricky with 30% of respondents because we don't know if it's generalizable, if certain people who are particularly pleased or particularly unpleased sometimes, like I say, when you get on Amazon and review something. So sometimes you get that bimodal distribution, but other times you don't, and it's generalizable. So it's just, we just want to be cautionary about that. The people who responded are pretty pleased with the climate. Staff and students agreed that staff are caring and respectful. Someone is here I can talk to. This is a safe place. School supports learning, and the italicized is something that needs some work. Both staff and students want to see more care and respect from students. Students also said the rules and consequences are clear. They want to feel more purpose and impact, like why am I in school, and want more fairness around conflict. And the staff said what they do in school matters, conflicts are handled fairly, and they want more clarity in rules and consequences. That's why we asked both. The discipline data, as I think you know, is improving. Referrals are down, which is telling us that classroom interactions are improving. And suspensions are down as well. Keep working with circles and involving as many people as possible, one staff member says. The challenges that remain, as we've talked about, racial disproportionality, even as that those discipline numbers go down. Staff talked about desire for more consistency and clarity in rules and consequences, and that's something I actually see in every school I've worked in. That's a tricky thing. Staff and students desire to have teachers and students lead circles and restorative practices in addition to deans was a theme that came up. And I'll talk about, we actually have a student group that's learning to facilitate circles, just like there is in the middle school. And more information about circles and circle outcomes was another theme. So I want to say, you know, given the topic this evening, that I found out about the restructuring decision yesterday, along with everybody else, and of course I worked on this report for weeks and months, as far as the data analysis. So, you know, having said that, there was a modest theme about staff and students saying that they wanted to expand circle keepers beyond the deans, and a couple of people saying that it did feel incongruent to have the deans do both consequences and restorative circles. So it was a small, modest, it was a modest theme that was there. And here's a quote: reporting general feedback to staff would be helpful. Having an idea if the circle participants felt that they were effective would be nice, and might prompt others to use circles to help out in conflict situations. So more communication. Similarly to the middle school, the awareness data is really parallel. Staff respondents feel very aware of conflict circles and know how to initiate one, and students, at least those who responded to the survey, feel less aware and not sure how to initiate one. So that's both at the middle school and high school. Is something that we can definitely work on. It's like a nice and workable thing. And I think I also want to add again, just because of this evening, that where there were, oh, this is annoying, where there were comments around deans and circle keepers, they were definitely at the structural level and absolutely not in the personal level. Just thinking about how are we going to become more restorative and how does it fit together. Okay. Participation in conflict circles. This is an estimate based on sort of an estimate of how many circles were done per week, as opposed to kind of a chart that the middle school keeps. There are more than 500 total circles and restorative conversations, which is a more informal, like two students might be in a dean's office and they just facilitate a quick restorative conversation, or in the hallway. Vast majority were facilitated by deans and some were facilitated by teachers. 34% of staff survey participants referred someone to a circle, usually a student, and also 34 were in a circle, usually with students, so not with staff. 12% of student survey respondents had been in a circle. And another comment about spreading stories of success. We have a short fidelity and satisfaction self-report measures. This is not our team members coming into the school and looking at fidelity, but self-report. And we ask about how effective was the listening in circles, and effectiveness of prep meetings, how helpful was the circle, how fair and respectful were the facilitators, how effective were the agreements or actions at the end, and would you recommend a circle to others? And again, just to be cautious, we're asking this at the end of the year to summarize all their experiences, more than 500 circles, and it's only 30% responses. However, kind of similar results to the middle school, where circle keepers felt all of those items were an A, or highly agree for next year. And staff circle participants felt it was a B, and students gave it a C. So same as the middle school. So that's something to look at, you know, and make sure that students are feeling heard, or is it that they need to learn more about restorative practices and conflict? Because remember, our leadership group had those higher circle satisfactions. So there might be something to be said about, if I understand what's happening, it makes more sense to me, I'm more satisfied. Keep teaching teachers and students. More buy-in from students, and having students teach each other or teach teachers would be great. It's this idea of involving students. And make sure everyone actually wants to do it, a student says, and don't wait so long to do it. That's a tricky one, because if you, in my experience, if you do it too soon, people are heated. If you wait longer because you're trying to get people, you know, it can get, so in my experience, that's a tricky one as a facilitator myself. Use of restorative practices by staff. So as far as circles, 35% of respondents had been in a circle keeper workshop, and I think that's pretty similar to UMS. And those folks said they facilitated about 3 circles a year. And then 40% of staff had been in a circle with students usually, and they gave those circles a B. So staff are pretty satisfied. Practicing restorative practices, which are beyond circles, as well as reading about it. 65% of staff respondents use restorative practices at work and home. And then we had an open-ended question just saying, tell us which ones, what did you do? Had lots of responses for that. People talked a lot about listening tools and reflection. There's this leadership matrix that I was teaching that year. Classroom community building, lots of people talked about that. Feelings and needs word sets, and sharing meals, which was a big theme of last year, was breaking bread. So that's why you're seeing that in both schools. And that was the newsletter about the breaking bread. And 63% of respondents read their weekly restorative newsletter and say it's pretty helpful. So here's a bunch of quotes about people actually, in their own words, how they're using restorative practices. I think sharing a meal is oddly the most useful. It seems random, but it does help. I guess everyone is happier and more open when they're eating. I've tried to use listening and prompts like tell me more in interactions with mentors and students to encourage them to come to their own decisions. In the past, I've more frequently jumped right into suggesting solutions instead of listening and reflecting. I've helped with some conflict circles, but I've also used check-in circles to connect with kids. I've also tried just thinking more about underlying feelings and needs, and have had those conversations when things have felt sticky. So these are staff members. And those are the values that we talk about that are underlying all human communications. And continue on the use of restorative practices by staff, we asked them about barriers and needs for implementing it more consistently. People said, more time. It does take time. More support from building leadership. No specifics, but just more tools. More support and commitment from, the reason it's number three is because they're tied. So these were tied for their 3rd place. More support and commitment from colleagues, so if we can all do more of this together in our classrooms, it becomes easier. Restorative practices are tricky. I have a curriculum I'm supposed to go through, like how do I get it in there? And then need more faith and belief in student abilities. So people talked about sort of admitting that sometimes what gets in their way is not believing students can be more restorative or more autonomous, and that they want to work on that. And so this is staff recommendations, open-ended themes about how to improve use of restorative practices. Start earlier in the year with refresher kickoff and maybe with students and staff together. More tools and PD. Involve teachers and students in leading restorative practice in circles in addition to deans. And be more consistent application of restorative practice and consequences. And then there was a theme about don't give up on this. Like, it's going to take time, stick with it, which was interesting. Don't give up, stay around and keep trying with us. Build it more into PD instead of it being another thing. These are additional recommendations from our team, similar to UMS. Revisit discretionary discipline referrals like defiance and disrespect. As we talked about, there's more room there for bias to come out, even if it's unconscious bias. Revisiting rules, consequence, and fairness as a school community. Like, for example, facilitate a collaborative meeting like we had at Yankee Ridge. Because both students and teachers are talking about those issues. Invest in more data collection. This is hard and tricky, but that would help us not say this is a snapshot in May. And continue commitment to integrate restorative and racial equity initiatives, which I've definitely been part of meetings where that was integrated explicitly, so that people understand, as you can see in that left column, restorative practices, racial equity are completely complementary, and you can't have one without the other. The other three remaining recommendations are to explore ways to support teachers and students in leading restorative practice in circles. This is challenging and tricky because of staff schedules and student schedules. Circles take prep, and then at least 45, 50 minutes usually to do, and because we're involving 4 or 5 people, because it's not a mediation of 2 people, and teachers have prep, but the student might be in class. This is challenging. So just saying to explore ways to do this. This is a U Restore student leadership group. They began as UMS. Kids that worked with me the previous year contacted me. 2 of them actually spoke here today. Isaac was the one who led this. Contacted me and said, we'd like to continue. So we've been meeting every week since summer, first at my house, our house, and eventually at the high school. And they're learning how to facilitate circles. They're doing mock circles. They've offered their services. They have a lunch table where you can fill out a request form to have a circle. We haven't had any takes yet. They offered their services to one of the sports teams recently, and they said no, so we're getting there. But that's a group that just took it upon themselves to say, if you want peer-led circles, we're here. We've also talked about bringing restorative practices to athletics, classrooms, electives, so it's not, it goes beyond discipline in that way. And then exploring ways to use restorative practices among staff and faculty, for instance, to make collaborative decisions. So one of the things that I've been working with people on, and I offered a thing on it at that full day, what I'm talking about, institute thing, it's not the right word.
Yeah.
The what? Winter Institute, that's correct. It is institute. Is how to make more, how to create more collaborative meetings, and we've done that at Yankee Ridge and other places. So those are all ways to kind of go beyond circles. Acknowledgements, of course. I don't do the work. The people on the ground do the work. The restorative initiative would not be happening without district leadership, the support staff, and the school board, because all of that is being supported. I don't know if you noticed, regardless of how challenging that interaction was, how often the word restorative was used, and how infused it is in people's hearts and minds now. So that is something you have been supporting. And that's our mentor, Dominic Barter, who came and spoke in August. I hope that didn't take too much time. Questions, comments, hopes?
Any questions for Elaine?
Dreams.
Comments?
I love the idea of student-led circles. It gives the students a sense of ownership of the school culture. But I was wondering, how do you, gently supervise and make sure that they're really following the process?
Absolutely. And we agreed with the students that I would be there for the first however many. I have the flexibility since they're thinking of doing them during lunch. And there's just 3 lunch periods, and I said, I'll just sit in on the first many until the administration and the staff and I feel like, until otherwise noted. Yeah, absolutely. And we often co-facilitate in circles anyway, so that's a common model.
I'm just curious, has there been any repercussions or feedback at all from the student-led circles? Have they actually did it yet, or?
No, we haven't had a bite.
Okay.
So we've met and trained, and just recently they put a table in the cafeteria with sign-up sheets. People have been picking up the flyers. No one has taken them up yet on a facilitated circle.
Okay.
So, and then we offered one to a sports team to be unnamed, and they said, not right now, thank you.
I'm
So
just curious, and, you know, it would be interesting to see, you know, how the students feel about it.
personally, I think they would do great. We've done mock circles, and I think they're fantastic.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I do. They're
I
very
have
sharp.
a quick question. What's the difference between a conflict circle and a check-in circle? You
Great
may have told
question.
us this already.
Oh, I
I'm
don't know.
sorry.
Maybe I didn't. So sometimes I have you guys go around and do like an appreciation or the little activity I had you do last time with a superhero. So check-in circles are a community building thing. You maybe talk about your weekend or appreciate each other. Is a way to get to know each other and build community. And a conflict circle would be if you and I had a misunderstanding or I offended you, then Matt would facilitate a conversation between us, and maybe we would invite Kathy and Carol because they care about us and they're wise. So it's a little different than mediation, which would probably just be you and me. Facilitator would do almost all the work. In the circle, Carol and Kathy and you and I would do a lot of the work, and Matt would kind of just hold the container. So they're not called conflict circles around the country necessarily. I think that's a term that either the middle school or the high school came to so they could separate those different kinds of circles.
I guess my question was because I kind of figured that's what a conflict circle was, but then when, in the context that was given there about the check-in circle, I was just wondering if that was a circle that was done post-conflict circle, or if it was just a generalized check-in for any student, even if the students didn't have a conflict.
Yep. So
do they ever do after a conflict circle is held? I guess what I'm trying to ask is after one is held and there's restorative circle given, do they do a post check-in to see how people are doing?
Yeah, you're asking about something we call follow-up.
Yeah.
Yes, that is part of the model. Is you want to have an informal follow-up, see how are the actions doing, how are the people feeling. Occasionally, you need to have another meeting or conversation. The check-in circles are to check in before a class begins.
Yeah, so they're just preemptive and positive.
Yes, I've also heard something called shout-outs that people do at the end of a class, like everybody just encouraged to shout out positives. I would call that a checkout circle, even though it looks very dynamic. So that's building community. And then with a conflict circle, we'll follow up afterwards.
So are you collecting data on the follow-up surveys at all from our work? Because
like when somebody checks in, when somebody says, how is it going?
Yeah, I mean, beyond just looking at the number of referrals going down and things like that, but the actual personal interactions, has the conflict been resolved? Are those students feeling better about everything? I mean, is there any way we can collect that data to find out, how to tweak the system if we need to?
I think that's a good intention.
But it's a lot of work.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it can't be. I think that's something to explore.
Yeah.
It's tricky because if you're the circle keeper and you're giving out, there's a little bit of like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Oh, it was great, right? So then you have to have a third party.
Privacy and all
privacy.
that. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So I think it's a great conversation to have, and we can get there. That would be ideal. Or we've talked about once a month. Like instead of just in May, like once a month, everybody who's had a circle, how's it going? So then they're not going back as far.
Okay. Well, thank you again for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks, Elaine. Joe, you're up.
There's a Tina coming up.
The topic is the district equity audit.
Right.
So joining Joe Wiemelt is Yamada Smith, who's Director of Curriculum Instruction, and Linda Gibbons, who's our Director of Parent-Based Programs, and Natalie Bretz, who's our Director of Professional Development, and Lupe Riccone, who's our Director of Elementary Bilingual Programs.
We expanded.
Great.
For tonight.
I appreciate that. Sorry that we didn't get all your names on the agenda,
That's
but
okay.
appreciate you all being here and staying late. And I'll let you guys take it away.
All right, I'm going to get us started off. We are combining the two items, study topics, the one that Natalie's listed on next. We're kind of combining them into one PowerPoint because they flow nicely together,
Okay.
and it will go a little quicker.
Okay, so for the purpose of our viewing audience.
Thank you.
That next one is cohort professional development.
Perfect. So I'll get us started just as a real quick overview of the equity audit work that we've been engaging in the past year and a half plus, and with a new updated draft version of a school improvement planning format and process that we would like to discuss with you tonight, receive any feedback that you have before we kind of finalize it and start working with school improvement teams moving forward. So Yvonne and I are going to kind of share these first couple slides.
So first we want you to know what our mission is, and we are committed and we are a community that is devoted for dismantling the inequities. In doing so, we want to make sure that all students reach their greatest potential. And so the first thing that we've done is we are looking at race right now. And then the other entities, we are going to look at it as time goes on as well.
So this is just an image that we've used since the start of our Unified Professional Development committed to equity and racial equity. So this just highlights the work that we've been doing. The inner circle has been a focus on what we would refer to as relational and professional development learning as it relates to understanding issues of racism, issues of oppression and privilege as they operate in society and in schools in particular. So really helping all of us in the community, in our district community, be more self-aware, understanding who we are as in terms of our identity, understanding difference, understanding our own biases and our mindsets that we bring to the table every day, and how that influences our work with kids and how it influences our work with each other and the broader community. The outside circle is more of the technical work, so the structural programs, the structural initiatives that we have in place, the instructional practices, the programming, a variety of different programmings. And so equity work is truly inside out. It should be constantly moving in and out of constant self-reflection, constant critical questioning of who we are and what we think and what we believe, and also really questioning our practices, questioning our programming, questioning our initiatives, and really being willing to dismantle them when they're inequitable and rebuilding them to be more equitable for our students and for our community, and constantly wrestling with that back and forth.
So tonight, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to give an overview of what the new equity audit will look like and how that ties into the district the district improvement plans. And then also we want you to know where our progress is as far as from the equity updates. So currently right now we have a recruitment and retention committee that's been meeting since the fall. And the goal for the recruitment and retention committee is that in the next 5 years, within the next 5 years, the percentage of staff in regards to race and ethnicity will match the student population. And so that is the end goal. And then also another thing we've been doing is making sure we provide professional development in the area of being culturally responsive. So what we have done is, first of all, make sure the staff is aware that being culturally responsive is not the same thing as multicultural education, and what are the misconceptions that go along with having a culturally responsive classroom. The 3 things we are currently right now using Zaretta Hammond's books, and it is a culturally responsive teaching in the brain. And there are 3 ways that you can do that. You can storify it in the classroom, you can gamify it, or you can make it social. So those are ways that you can pull in other references to make sure that you are building upon the students' cultural backgrounds and making sure that it is relevant to all of the students in their learning. The other thing that we are doing is we are committed to reviewing our current policies right now, our procedures and our structures, to make sure that we are looking at it from an equity lens. We are, at our CO leadership group, we have already started looking at family engagement policies, what is fairness as far as looking at our curriculum, making sure it is aligned and that it is conducive to the environments that we are trying to have in our schools.
Numbers 2, 3, and 4 are what Natalie and Lupe are going to go over. So you'll see this slide again in just a minute. I want to just highlight the audit and the school improvement format here on the screen. You obviously have this slide in front of you, but I'm going to click on some links to some other documents that I'll just project. But we want to really emphasize the purpose for equity audits and how they inform equity-focused school improvement is to implement a targeted and rigorous equity audit to inform our school improvement processes to effectively operationalize racial equity. So we've spent the past year and a half really engaging in understanding and coming to kind of a consensus about the urgency behind racial equity work. The next step is operationalizing it in terms of really engaging in action and change that will create more outcomes for our students. So the outcomes that we're focusing on are closing those racial disparities. We saw the previous presentation on restorative practices, reducing referrals, reducing suspensions, but the disparities remain. And so the equity work, the way in which it overlaps and informs and works together with restorative practices is to attack those disparities as well. So we want to see a decrease in those, for example, as well as a decrease in the gaps and the disparities between them. We can also talk about this in terms of academic achievement, graduation rates, etc. I'm going to click on this document here that is called Equity Audit and School Improvement. And I want to just show you, every year you see principals come before you and present their school improvement plans. And we've been using a similar format for the past 3 years approximately. And we have, as a team, really looked at how do we make the format more intentional to racial equity work and racial equity, operationalizing racial equity. And so I'm going to go quickly through this, but if you have questions, slow me down. But I know it's late, and I'm usually asleep on the couch at this point. So we are, let me see if I can figure out how to work this. I have a Mac, so, okay. So the front page is really emphasizing the connection to the equity vision statement, really emphasizing our school strengths, the progresses that we have made the past year, plus to highlight those and continued growth areas that we want to focus on as a school. So what we are hoping for is that school improvement teams use this format as they're writing their new plans for next year and moving forward. So that's the first page. The second page, and one thing I missed was this would be hyperlinked to our district data and our district goals in this same format, which I'll show in just a minute. The second page is, I'm going to, whoops, sorry. I'm not good with this. I need a mouse. Yeah. The equity audit data sheets I'm going to come back to at the end, but every school team is going to have this document in Google Drive and a Google Doc linked to an Excel sheet, a Google sheet, with all of the data absolutely necessary to analyze the effectiveness of different programs, the effectiveness of the school improvement initiatives, all in one place. Before, we've asked school improvement teams to do it on their own, to bring it on their own, and it's been more difficult. It's a lot to ask school improvement teams to organize all of that on their own. So we want to, as a district office, provide that for them, to come to the meetings when they're planning goals already with the data in hand in this format, which I'll show you in a minute. We also want, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We also want to have, one of the differences that we want to emphasize in this new format is to have specific, explicit targets to closing inequities, to closing racial disparities in particular. And we want that to happen across assessments, across behavior outcomes, across personnel, representation, etc. So we are going to be working with school improvement teams to set, based on baseline data from one year to the next, benchmarks from year to year with long-term projections that closing those gaps over the course of 5 to 7 years to 10 years, depending on the severity or the size of the gaps. So we have, for example, PARC, other literacy assessments, semester exams or grades, behavior referrals, attendance rates, graduation rates, etc. And so what we envision is that schools will sit down and have a clear picture of where we're at currently across these areas with specific targets and the percentage point increase as it's broken down by different student groups. So as you can see, for example, across race, across ELL status, across free and reduced lunch status, etc. That's just the table that would be filled out when schools are working on their goals. And then we get to something that looks a little more similar to what we've done in the past. This is where you'll see action plans. What we really want to move to is not so much, here's the different activities what we're going to do, like here's a parent night we're going to do, or here is a professional development book study we're going to do together. Those are activities that influence change and improvement, but we want to see specific change and improvement listed in their school improvement goals. So we want to see what the current state looks like as it relates to the student outcomes that we're trying to improve and what the desired state will look like. And we want to be explicit, we want to be intentional, and we want to be very much working towards those goals as we move forward. Of course, it jumps all the way back up when I press down. And so we have current state, desired state for students, for staff, for families. We want to continue to push for growth in all those areas. I almost did it again. And then we want those specific action items, those specific action steps to be addressed there on how we're going to move from the current state to the desired state. Not just activities or not just professional development, but what are the changes that are going to be made as they're necessary. And then the next page is the professional development plan. So we do want professional development, of course, to be linked directly to our goals, linked directly to our plans. But the professional development plan is not an action in and of itself listed before. The professional development plan will be supporting the change initiatives that are listed on the previous page. Does that make sense? So these are all the different ways in which we engage in professional development. So school improvement teams, instructional coaching, restorative practices, etc. School-wide learning around professional development, racial equity, etc. And then we have another resource folder there. So I want to jump back up, and then I'm going to pause just for any questions in the middle of this. And Linda's also going to talk a little bit about the data piece. So this part right here where we click to the data sheets, this is what schools will have access to, only it'll be filled out. This is a blank template right now. So they'll have intersectional demographic breakdown of who their students and families are, across race, across free and reduced lunch status, across IEP, students with IEPs, students who are ELLs, etc. We want personnel data. So we want to, Yvonne mentioned that in 5 years we want to see our teaching and licensed staff match the demographics of our students. And so we want those specific targets by building as well. We want to see that mirror who our students are over time. An academics tab in terms of PARCC and other literacy and math assessments and other semester exams, graduation rate, etc. One of the things we're going to just kind of highlight is around one of the tabs specifically in behavior that Linda does a lot of work with around PBIS and restorative practices. So she's going to talk a little bit about that.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I've been working on the data piece, the behavioral piece. And as you might remember, we use SWIS, which is school-wide information systems. And we've been using this for quite a while, so we have many years of data on behavior. Right now we're using it only at our elementary schools. We did at one time have it at the middle school too, but they're no longer using SWIS, but they're using Skyward and other things to take its place. So the 6 elementary schools, whenever there's a office discipline referral, the information is entered into SWIS. SWIS provides us with some really nice graphs that show the time the incident happened, overall graphs of incident, time, location, where it took place, what the problem area was. I used to send this information to the board, and now we've kind of changed it up a bit, and we've gotten a little more complicated in the data that we're looking at, and so I'm no longer using those graphs like we used to. But that information is really helpful to us when we're looking at in our schools, like where are our problems, what can we do about the problems in the hallway, or what, wherever we see those targeted areas. So this past spring, Joe and I had looked into some additional data from SWIS, and there's a lot of ethnicity information in the SWIS system. So you can also look over the course of several years too. So we started really looking at the ethnicity data, and the disproportionality information based on different subgroups and ethnicity groups. So that information was really interesting to us and really did show that we do have disproportionality in our schools. So it brings it down from something that we see at a national level where we see over-representation or over-identification in certain areas of discipline. Here, it's right here at home in our schools, and we can really see our own data. So it brings it to all of us. So we took that information to the principals so that they can look at it themselves. Some of them started doing that at the start of the school year. Spencer was using some at Leal in his equity trainings, and then Danielle used it later in the year in her equity trainings. So it was a nice way to bring the information to the staff. I mean, just continuing on, it's we can see it over the course of time. We can see if there's any changes. We can use it for progress monitoring. We can use it for changing some of our practices and looking at what's working and what's not. It's interesting information, and I said that it's only at the elementary schools, although we know the math problem. We've got the formula down, and all we need is the information out of Skyward for the middle school and the high school, and we really can do the same thing there. We don't have the pretty charts as we do at the elementary schools, but so you'll be hearing more about it, and that data will be, you know, available to everybody as they're working on their school improvement plans.
So that risk ratio formula, actually, Dan Bechtel mentioned earlier, that was the same formula he was referring to, is something that you can compare fairly across all of our schools. The risk ratio is something you can compare as it relates to 1. 1 would be the perfect, what we want. Any school that's over 1, we could compare them to each other, and it allows you to look across different ends, across different schools and a different total number of students, et cetera. Before we move on to Natalie and Lupe's part of the presentation, we wanted to just pause and see if there's any questions specific to this format. One thing I do want to mention is that we've, this is still a draft form, and so we want, after our conversation tonight, if there's any feedback from the board, we also plan on having this conversation with professional development cadre, as well as teaching different teachers groups across the district to get their feedback, school improvement teams to get their feedback before we formalize a new process, a new format. So,
if all goes as planned with this, how would you go about training and rolling it out to staff?
So we are, our plan is that at every cabinet meeting we have remaining with cabinet and principal meetings, which would be twice a month with principals, that they're working with this document, working with the data that's being produced and created in the equity sheets. Then their school improvement teams that are meeting regularly are going to be engaging in this. They're already meeting and using kind of the older format for ongoing review of their goals. And so we would bring them in through our upcoming PD quarterly meetings, any school improvement leadership meetings that we have. And then we have the 3 dates that Natalie's going to share in just a minute that are in May. The Equity Institute, which is 1 day devoted to school improvement, 1 day is devoted to the equity cohort, which she'll talk about, as well as 1 day devoted to a general district-wide professional development day. So there'll be multiple opportunities for teams to work on it and receive training from us for that. So, thank you for the question.
Other comments? I see a lot of value to what you're doing here in terms of a little bit more specifics and things like that. I'm wondering if we need wondering how to state this. For instance, the 5-year goal for having the staff reflect. I consider that an aspirational goal, but I wouldn't want us to be held. That's a challenging, that's a high challenge aspirational goal to me in my head. I've been here for a long time. I've had a lot of people sitting over there in Catherine's chair who have told me all about the great lengths that we've gone to as a district to try to achieve that goal. Maybe 5 different people have sat there and each said, we've done everything we possibly can do. And candidates aren't there or don't want to come here. And so I'm hoping that we're not, in the name of trying to be perfect, that we're not setting ourselves up for failure.
I think that's a fair question, and I would say if we don't strive for greatness and perfection, then what are we striving for? And so I think if we shoot for the moon and land among the stars, we're on our way to the moon, right? And so I would say what I've seen most recently in our recruitment efforts and some of the data in terms of our most recent job fairs and the candidates who have come to our table, have expressed interest, are coming for visits. We're seeing a larger increase in interested candidates across race than we've seen in previous years. And I would say we've seen in our data, just personnel data, an increase particularly in Latino teachers as it relates to working in dual language. We've seen an increase of 6% over the past 5 years. And if that happens again in the next 5 years, that will match the student demographics of Latino students. So I think we're on our way. And I think it's better to have targets and work towards them, and if we miss them, we come back, revisit, and reset the targets, than to not have targets at all. And so
yeah, I guess I'm reacting a little bit to the input that we got tonight, in that don't get me wrong, I want us to strive for the aspirational goal, and I want the aspirational goal to be very, very strong. But when we begin to, remember I predicated my comments by I appreciate the revised form and the more specifics, and because
more
sitting here
measurable.
and listening to the school improvement plans and hearing the same thing year after year after year after year,
yes,
and not seeing any closed loop feedback
Yep.
on, well, this is what I said last year and this is where I am.
Yep.
I think you've built that into the form, and I really like that.
Good.
But I want to make sure that, and I picked the one goal that you mentioned.
Yeah.
You may have other goals that you've already thought about in these other areas, and I want to make sure that those are arrived at in the Urbana way.
Sure.
I hate to
Sure.
put it that way, but I honestly don't want 5 people and your committee, if there's other people, sitting up there saying, well, our goal is this, and you're going to do it, and by God, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And we're going to hold you immensely responsible if you don't make it without the buy-in.
Sure. And that's a great point. And I think what's solid about this plan, in addition to everything you said, is that they're blank right now. And so the purpose of the goals to be written are written by the school improvement teams, which are teachers and administrators and other staff, support staff as well. They're writing the goals. They're helping set the targets. Those aren't imposed. That's just a district-wide goal out of our personnel, HR office, and the recruitment and retention committee's goals for the district. But these specific, like this plan right here, would be filled out completely by a school team, inclusive of teachers, parents, et cetera.
Okay.
But thank you for that.
Yep. Other comments, questions about this portion of this presentation?
All
I
right.
take it we're about ready to move into professional development.
Yes.
All right, I'm Natalie Bretz, Director of Professional Development. And Lupe Ricconi, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Lupe Ricconi, Director of Elementary Bilingual Programs.
Okay, so we are going to be doing the professional development portion of our equity, racial equity piece tonight. And so I just wanted to start by giving you an update on what we've been doing for the past 2 years, starting in the 2016-2017 school year. Unified Professional Development actually goes back to our original strategic plan. It came out of that, and in 2012 was the first year where we had professional development, early childhood through 12th grade, consistent across the board. And so we've continued that model. Last year, the focus was on racial equity, and we've continued that and will continue that. Every month, at least one Monday meeting, and sometimes that day is different in different buildings. There is a professional development session for all staff on racial equity. This is the first year that we've invited support staff, clerical staff, custodians to those trainings. We're providing timesheets for those people who are off the clock, and many have taken us up on that opportunity. Last year, we really focused on the relational work, that inner circle that Joe was showing earlier. And this year, we're continuing that work and moving into the technical piece. And we'll continue that back and forth, inner outer work as we move on. And especially now that we're so focused with the school improvement planning, we'll be going back and forth between that technical, the structural changes, and that relational, reflectional work that we do. As a district, we have monthly sessions for central office, facilities, technologies, after school, child care program, leadership. Those happen once a month during the day. We also have monthly sessions for our CO leadership, which is our directors and coordinators at the district level. And our cabinet, which is our principals and administrators, continue to work on equity through continuous improvement, planning, lens, and that's also monthly. We have things that are open to the whole district as well that are optional. We have summer institutes, and we put out a professional development offerings booklet each semester where there are book groups and different inquiry groups that are optional and open to any staff related to racial equity. These are some of the topics that we've covered over the past 2 years. And you can see we've gone in and out of that circle, the inner and outer circle, by talking about implicit bias and white privilege, to being more culturally responsive in your teaching strategies, to really looking at the oppression and privilege that we face every day in our society. I cut out some of the bullet points of this slide, but this is the same slide that we looked at a little bit ago. So we'll be talking about 2, 3, and 4 next. One of the changes for next year, and that we started this spring, is to provide an additional layer of support called an equity leadership cohort. So these are some of the goals of our equity leadership cohort. Basically, we want to provide an extra layer of support for those people who are really committed and want to dig deeper, but the monthly sessions that they're having in their building aren't enough. But they need to be surrounded by other like-minded individuals who are challenging themselves and holding each other accountable to do this work professionally and personally in their day-to-day lives.
And one of the challenges of the monthly meetings isn't that it's not an engaging experience, is that oftentimes the time period once a month isn't enough for people to really dig deep into one specific topic or content area. So this being an additional layer allows people who want to dig in deeper to the work an opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. So we are just starting this spring. We have 2 dates this spring and 1 day early this summer, and with the goal in mind to continue this more regularly next school year. The people who have registered so far don't have a charge to go forward and do anything other than be committed to this work.
So the way that we decided to move forward in recruiting for this cohort group actually started through Winter Institute, where we offered 2 sessions to the entire district that they could come and hear about the cohort, hear about kind of our ideas about what the cohort could really be and how people could engage in the group. We did have a large number of people come and listen to the session. We had a form to fill out if you were interested and wanted to sign up. We did get some there. In addition, we also sent out an email to the entire district explaining what the cohort group was going to be and how often it would meet and how you could be involved. We have had close to 80 people register. At our last session, even from when we had technically closed registration just in orde to prepare name tags and sign-in sheets and such, we still had even more people say, well, can I still camp? Absolutely, this is open to everyone in the district. We have had representation from almost every building in the district, including some substitutes and some TAs that also wanted to participate in the work. So far this spring, we have had one meeting on March 1st. We will have another cohort group meeting on April 11th, and then one day of our summer PD, of our early summer PD, will be devoted just to the cohort, to really spend an entire day digging deep into the work. We have also had people who say that, you know, these evening commitments are challenging due to other engagement. So one component that we wanted to implement in order to make sure that everyone really had an opportunity to participate in the work was providing a Google Classroom with the minutes, with the presentations, with any resource articles that we're sharing, so that way people can still engage in the cohort group even though they can't physically be present.
And so this is an example of what we did at our March 1st session, which was our first session of the Equity Leadership Cohort. So our outcomes were to really build a community with that group. Like Lupe said, we had representation from almost every building, so we really wanted them to get to know each other and build that community, understanding what the goals of this group were and what they were signing up for. And then we dug really deep into these two topics of critical consciousness and transformative resistance, which is basically recognizing and being critical about the inequities that we see around us, and then what do we do about them? How do we transform those inequities and really to make a more socially just structure system?
And the graphic that's included here was a guide for this discussion, you know, as far as where you would see yourself when faced with issues of injustice or faced with an awareness of inequities. You know, where do you position yourself within this grid? Ultimately, we want people to be in the square of transformative resistance, where not only are you seeing the inequity, but that you're actually motivated and doing something about it. So from our first set of reflections from the cohort group, these were some of the responses that we got from some of the participants. You know, they were very positive. I won't read through each one necessarily, but, you know, feeling that, you know, people were very encouraged, and, you know, I felt very encouraged and by the willingness to question conformity in order to affect change and growth. You know, I was uncomfortable and curious. The prompts were difficult, and we intended this to be a much deeper conversation, that the conversations were going to be more challenging and really push people. You know, I thought that it was very engaging and effective, happy to be a part of the work. This was the best experience I've had digging into difficult topics. So from our first session, we were very pleased with the results.
Mm-hmm. And so that's, like we said, that's an additional layer to the equity professional development that we're doing. Our professional development cadre, which is our teacher leaders in each building, and we also have some support staff who are part of that group, who are doing the facilitation each month in their buildings. They're going to continue doing that next school year. So the cohort is an additional layer to those monthly sessions. Next school year, those sessions will be focused around being more culturally responsive, whether that's in your instruction, your curriculum, your classroom management, and we're going to be working over the summer and developing a scope and sequence for what that will look like. We're going to continue that relational work, that trust building, that community building that is so important when you're having these difficult conversations. And the equity leadership team will continue to support schools. So right now, the team that is charged with planning our racial equity work, we are all divided up in supporting the principals and the professional development cadre members so that they're not alone in their buildings doing this work, that they have district support as well. Mm-hmm. And then we have some summer professional development that we've kind of mentioned already. On May 30th, we have a Leading for Racial Equity Institute. This is open to the entire district, and the board is welcome to attend, and you're invited to come. You'll be probably receiving some emails about this soon. This will be a similar institute to our very first kickoff, which was in the spring of 2016. So we're encouraging new employees to attend, new administrators to attend, or people who weren't able to make it to that session, or people who just want to have a refresher of what that was. May 31st will be specifically devoted to the people who are signed up to be part of the cohort. And we will continue to dig deep with them and give them some challenging topics to dig into and to really learn more about the critical consciousness and transformative resistance. On June 1st, that day will be devoted to school improvement teams to work on their continuous and school improvement plans using the template and the equity audits that we just saw. And that is it for us. If we have any questions, now would be a great time. I'm done.
Board members, questions?
Well, I just want to say that I was able to go to the first
That's
two
right.
institutes, and they were just so well
Yep.
done. I really appreciate your fine work. You know, many of these new directions you're taking, the cohorts and the PD cadre and so forth, I know you originally got a lot of your good ideas from the group out in Oakland. Now, are these some of their ideas, or have you now taken this on? Are these ideas that you've kind of developed in-house, and these are new and fresh, or are you still getting guidance from the group out in Oakland, California?
Yeah, so we contracted with them last year, and they provided some training for us, and we used a lot of their materials to get us started. But what we found that we were kind of moving beyond where they were taking us, and so now we're developing the information on our own and pulling in resources from multiple areas.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thanks, team.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
The questions get shorter as the night goes longer.
Yeah, well, partly, you kind of don't want to keep them.
Moving on with our agenda, we have no call for a future special or executive meeting at this point in time. And so we're ready for superintendent's report.
Yeah, I just have a few quick things. I appreciate not only our focus tonight on equity and restorative practice, but I also really appreciate the comments from members of Urbana High School about our changes related to the deans. And I just want to make a few general comments because I think that they're warranted at this time. One is I heard a couple times that, and I sensed that people felt that there was some kind of indictment against the current deans. And I want to say that there's nothing further from the truth in the ideas that we're putting forth in terms of breaking down inequitable practices and structures. In fact, the examples that I heard tonight about what the deans do are all examples of things that aren't in a dean's job description. When a dean is connecting with students before and after school, when a dean is having lunch with students, when a dean is going out and helping us on recruiting drives at colleges, those are not in a dean's job description. Our deans are incredibly strong educators. We are not firing these individuals, and we are not in saying that they as individuals have not done an excellent job. In fact, they have pushed the limits of what a dean structure has done. I will say that when we talk about deans, the primary function of a dean has been dealing with student discipline. And as we push forward with issues of improving equitable outcomes for students and pushing forward with restorative practices, we want to do that in a system, and when I say system, I mean a school district, that doesn't have deans, because our restorative practices will be so strong. That doesn't mean that these individuals who have done a great job don't have a place in our system. In fact, many of them will probably be leaders in issues of restorative practices, in other forms that actually do a better job of building and creating supports for our students so that they can achieve their personal greatness. I just wanted to say that to begin with, and I'm happy to go through, and we will go through with our administrators and staff the list of questions that were asked. I took copious notes. Happy to address those, and I'd also be happy to address any questions or concerns that the board has. If you want to put them down in writing, I think we'll kind of generate those and feed them back to you. That's number one. Number two is another piece that came out of public comment, but is actually something that I talked about last board meeting, and I have been working on slowly, but I do want to essentially ask for guidance from the board, and that is about the issue. Sorry about my comfort level is hitting its maximum here. For those of you who didn't hear me on WILL a week ago yesterday, I made some that was where I made my public statements about what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And I just want to summarize a couple of those things because I think it's important for me to say these things publicly. But I also want the board to think about the question that was posed by the two students, Isaac and Theo, tonight. And so as I'm saying these things, I want you to be thinking about their question, and that is, will the board support our staff in joining students in a show of demonstration and support for the students of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida? So, in essence, my comments on the show the 21st with Nyla Boodoo on WILL were that the school shooting in Parkland, Florida was beyond horrific for a number of reasons. One is it speaks to problems that are larger than issues in that one school or issues that that one child had, who was able to go out and buy a weapon of war at the age of 18, almost before he could even vote in an election, before he's allowed to buy alcohol in that state. And he can inflict massive harm and terror on a community. I also stated that I was impressed by the students of Parkland, Florida, and the student voice that has risen and grown across this country. I was very impressed by the students that I spoke to earlier this week, and the two students that came and presented in the midst of a long list of presenters tonight in public comment. As an educator and as a history teacher, I think that it's important that we provide spaces for our students to express their opinions about current events. I will say that as I've been composing some statements about how we might respond to school walkouts, I reflect on the fact that student voice is critical on this issue, because the students will be the ones who will be shaping policy in the future. Now, I'm not saying that any of these walkouts are designed at influencing legislators. I think that from the students I've talked to, a lot of it is about showing support for their fellow students, showing concern for school safety, and raising their voice in a public debate. There are three different local and national events that I'm aware of that relate to the response to what happened in Parkland, Florida on Valentine's Day. One is the 1 month anniversary on March 14th. Isaac and Theo spoke about this. There is a national walkout called for that's supposed to last for 17 minutes. It's supposed to basically a moment of silence. 1 minute for each student who was killed, each student and staff member that was killed at that high school. The next one is March 24th. It's a march on Washington, D.C., specifically to talk about gun reform and gun legislation reform. And then the final one is April 20th, which is a national school walkout on the anniversary of Columbine High School shooting in 1999. I guess I'm going to stop there. I have presented a document to the board members that talks about the fact that our primary responsibility is to ensure that our students are safe and that their social, emotional, and academic needs are met. And we encourage our students and teachers to talk about these issues. We also encourage any students who want to express and participate their views related to gun violence or remembering their peers around the country who have been impacted by gun violence, to work with their building principal and come up with a plan that will have a minimal disruption to the school day. We value student voice in important issues. We know that our students will conduct themselves in a peaceful and productive way when expressing their views. And we also recognize that students aren't the only ones that have these opinions. However, there is both Illinois law and school board policy that specifically prohibits political activity. And basically, I'd like to read the definition straight from board policy. Board policy 2.2:105, sorry. No employee shall intentionally perform any political activity during any compensated time, as those terms are defined herein. And the list of political activities is long, but the first sentence, I think, is what it's referring to. And so my question to the board is simply this. Is a demonstration on March 14th, would you view this as political activity, and would you instruct me to call it political activity when addressing our staff? Or would you see this as something that's different than political activity? So political activity is preparing for, organizing, or participating in any political meeting, political rally, political demonstration, or other political event. I guess I need guidance from the board before I give guidance to our staff and to our students. And so I'm posing a question to you at 10:21 at night after a very long board meeting, and I would appreciate your thoughts on this matter.
You know, I think in my mind, distinguish political activity from advocacy. I mean, and in my, I spent many years at the University of Illinois in early childhood education, and this was always drummed home to me because we were always in a position of having to advocate for quality early childhood education. And the lawyers at the university convinced, and my superiors in the college I served said, as long as you are advocating for what is good and right that we stand for, that is quite apart from advocating for a particular political candidate or political party. And I see this as very much in the advocacy realm. You know, we're advocating for public safety and public health, and to, you know, prohibit, to say something about gun laws that may impede on the public safety of our children. So I very much am in support of our district, supporting students and educators who wish to take part and speak out about this. I see it as an advocacy issue and quite different from political activity. And as I said, that's was made quite clear to me when I was in a role of, you know, a similar role. So I would very much hope that we can find a way to support teachers and educators who really need to speak out.
I see this as political activity. I see this as political activity myself because the piece that you said about the gun laws, that's it's very politically motivated right now. I think the climate is very on edge, and I think oftentimes people are very quick to take things to that next level. And I would hate for anything to happen to any of our students who could be out there in all innocence doing a remembrance. But as we've very well seen from the climate we live in, things could easily get out of control. So that is my concern.
As a child of the 60s, the description that you provided for what's expected on the 14th is 17 minutes of silence. And I view that as different than what could occur and what has occurred in terms of the lobbying that was done with the Florida legislature by the students. And so as an employee subject to the Hatch Act, and our employees are subject to the Hatch Act. It's public employees funded by public dollars are not allowed to engage in public activity in political activity on public time. For instance, I've really been out of it for the last 6 weeks or so with health issues, but I believe that someone on Bruce Rauner's staff is being brought up for participating in an open discussion, but being accused of violating the Hatch Act, as an example. I would be, it's a fine line, and one of the great things about what's occurring right now is it's student-led. And this district, historically, before I got on the board, faced the issue, let me bring one up, prayer around the flagpole. And Unit 4 had a significant problem with it and quashed it. And Unit 116 in the Urbana Way said if the students are initiating it, we don't have a problem with it. That was before school or after school, I can't remember which. And because students were organizing it and initiating it, a staff member was allowed to stand there and observe to make sure that everything was safe. But staff members were not allowed to participate in any form or fashion. You do this for one thing, we have to do it for everybody. And so I would express some reservations. I don't define political activity as simply in charge, being out there supporting one party or one candidate. I view it as influencing legislation. And I think the end goal, as a non-paid school board member, don't be too surprised if I'm not there on the 14th. But this has the potential of ending up in the political sphere that Brenda kind of alluded to. So I would be very careful. I would be very careful. I think if it's 17 minutes of silence, and that's what's proposed, I'll go back to my 60s days. We had a candlelight service for the Kent State students that were killed on campus. And students from the far right, the far left, it was gun violence of a bigger issue, a whole war. But students participated in that, and staff participated in that. And then it got violent, and it got pushy, and windows started to be crashed, and things like that, and a lot of people got the heck out of there. And a flag was burned, and that really put a different, and I'm not suggesting that that's what's going to occur here. I'm trying to draw the difference between a candlelight vigil, moments of silence, and something that bleeds over into advocating for a particular course of action.
Was there anything done at the high school when Columbine happened? Does anybody remember?
No, not that I recall.
I was at Urbana Middle School, and there were moments of silence. I would say that it took weeks, if not months, for students and staff to recover, because that was truly one of the first mass school shootings that changed the culture of school in many ways. And having experience that with students and experiencing the fear of every time a fire alarm goes off or every time there's a loud noise in the hallway, it does impact our students, even if it's not close to home. Parkland, Florida is a very long way away, but it's right next door, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Other board members?
I think I have to agree with what John said. As long as it's honoring the 17 fallen and not advocating for particular policy change, I think that's certainly well within the teacher's rights to do. But I think we run the risk of just getting our toe over the slippery slope if it becomes something other than that.
I'm looking at the 3 events, and I'm seeing a difference between March 14th, March 24th, and April 20th, and the goals and objectives of those 3 events.
I would say that I would agree with you. I would say that the first one has in many ways been led a lot by the students of Parkland, as has the April 20th date. In fact, those 2 dates, if you look at the social media of the students from Parkland, Florida, those 2 dates are the dates that stand out as the ones that they are calling for action on. I will also say that the National Superintendents Association that I belong to has basically challenged districts to do action, have some kind of remembrance, engage in civic action around the April 20th date, specifically about supporting public schools, supporting safety of students, and supporting the mental health of our society. So I would agree with you, John. I think that there is a marked difference. Just so that we don't prolong this meeting anymore, unless, I don't want to cut off board comment. So. I'll stop and I'll wait.
My only comment was, I do agree that it's a slippery slope, but Don, you kind of brought to light something that I think maybe we forget, is that this might bring some solace. It might assuage some fear in the kids and the staff, you know, just as a sign of respect for people we've lost, to sit and reflect on things and maybe feel a little solidarity with each other that we don't want this to happen in our school. Doesn't have to be politically motivated at all. It's just an awareness. It's 17 moments of awareness. So if it makes, I support anything that makes our kids feel safer, and it doesn't have to bring about any kind of political action, but I don't want us to get in trouble. I don't want there to be any sort of violence or anything, because, you know, that's just opening us up for everything. But it is different than demonstrating for a political cause, and I don't see that it's being punitive towards anyone, or that it's closing a dialogue with anybody who doesn't necessarily agree on how to deal with gun violence. I think it's just there as a mark of respect for the students that we've lost, and hopes that we can prevent it here.
And let's keep in mind that whatever is planned is student-led, and we adults need to be supportive, but let the students provide the leadership.
Okay. One of the things I will state to our staff is that student safety and student supervision is our primary concern, that students should not be influenced to participate or not participate by either their peers or especially staff. But if students do walk out of school, I'm going to ask that staff have a plan to keep students safe and supervised during that 17 minutes. And so that will be my directive to my administrators, and I will communicate that out to all staff as well, unless there's objection.
I just thought of something. And let it get out there into the airwaves. I would like to see, now that I've had a few minutes to sit and think, is a walkout into the halls. And why don't we all join hands throughout the full building? And all be one, like hands across America. Let's do it within our walls. We don't know what the weather's going to be like that day or anything like that. Let's be a community within inside our walls. Let's hold hands. Let's even talk quietly for 17 minutes while we honor these people. And that's just a thought. All up and down the hallways, all up and down the staircases, everything.
Student-led, remember that. Student-led. Student leadership. But we can be supportive. I think we can follow it by being supportive enough that that we pay attention to our restorative practice model and not be punitive.
I really appreciate your guidance, and I appreciate your thoughtful discussion of that. I really do. I will make sure that I capture all of those ideas. And again, our students, I'm confident in our students, and I'm sure that they will impress us all.
All right, other parts of the superintendent's report. Board reports.
I went to the IASB dinner the other night, and there was a lot of things, a lot of movement right now is happening between the House and the Senate. So we need to really keep our ears and eyes open to really see what's going on due to some of the climate around the schools right now. One of the big topics was charter schools. Another big topic was safety in the schools. And we also talked a little bit about resource officers in the schools. So there's a lot coming down from Springfield that we need to really be ready for.
Something wrong with that tool that they're using, and they need to revisit it.
The competency test.
I just heard on the news today that they're looking into that.
Because I hear a lot of people, a lot of these young people on the campus talking about, it's a test, so then they switch over to another field after they've completed their 4 years, because they've attempted to a few times.
Other board reports?
And are you gonna talk about besides that, where we went Friday night on a Friday night?
Benita and I went to the Department of Education, College of Education on the U of I campus to meet with some doctoral students who are getting their PhDs in, I don't remember what the specific topic their PhDs are in, but
this class was the superintendent.
for superintendent, for superintendent relations and how to training to be superintendents, whatever. There were several USD staff members in that class. There were some people from Unit 4. There was a former superintendent in that class, and we basically, Benita and I were there, Chris Kleppel and Amy Armstrong from Unit 4 were there. We had a board member from Farmer City, I believe, and another one from all the way up in Northern Illinois, who is a freshman at the University of Illinois, and he is a school board member at his school board back home. It was very impressive. But basically,
your record,
it was a Q&A session that we had with them, and they asked us questions about serving on a board and issues we've had and, advice and things like that. And it was just a really nice open forum to just connect with people who don't see their own districts from a different lens than we see it. And so it was very informative, and we could have kept talking all night. It was a good time.
I guess I would just like to indicate that I think the session topics tonight set some context for some of the input that we received this evening. But I do feel that, and I'm glad that the superintendent is going to prepare some responses and some explanations. I think there were some fairly important and powerful points presented tonight about process. So I'm hoping that that we have some further information on this issue prior to our business meeting. I think it's pretty important. So there were a lot of people here tonight that spoke that I have an extremely high regard for. Some of what they said would give me pause. And so I'm hoping that we have some, and I know it's late and it's not time to listen to that response, but I hope that everybody that was involved in the decision was listening carefully.
And unfortunately, I will be out of town.
So.
Well, thanks for that, John. I completely agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, ditto here. And can I just get it verified, confirmed? At the next meeting, we will be asked to act on
Is the RIF list on the
RIF list next week?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that, I have to say, that feels, I mean, you know, I just have to be honest, it's just too soon for me to be able to speak to that. So, I mean, there's just not a lot of time between now and then, and I'll follow up with an email to you, Don, about that. But just in the spirit of what you said, John, I would not be prepared to support that, given what I know. So, I will be at the meeting next week.
And I apologize. I think that the administration made an effort to inform board members, and I wasn't on my game. I might have raised some of the same issues earlier, or questions, raised the same questions. And depending on the answers may just be just fine and appropriate and move forward. But I think there were some issues raised tonight that are deserving of an answer. With that, a motion to adjourn might be in order.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And I think we need to give our superintendent a round of applause, because I know what kind of pain I was going through, and he made it through the meeting. So, thanks. We're adjourned.